The crowd at JFK roared and blurred until the world narrowed to three faces he'd spent 6 years trying not to picture. Priya, the ex-wife whose signature looked like a goodbye note in court filings, and two girls with his eyes, clutching matching dolphin backpacks. Ethan Mercer, whose name moved markets, forgot how to breathe. His phone kept buzzing with an emergency board vote. His driver waited with the engine running. The jet fuel smell cut the air. He stood rooted by the arrivals barrier, a billionaire disassembled by the one thing he couldn't arbitrage, the family he'd lost by his own hand. Terminal 4's fluorescent wash turned everything into a scene you could deny later. Ethan's bodyguard, Russell, said his name twice before stepping back. Maybe for privacy, maybe because the man who never hesitated suddenly looked very breakable. Priya had cut her hair blunt at the shoulders. It made her look like the version of herself who used to fall asleep on the couch with case files open, a strand of hair in her mouth. She spotted him. You could watch the calculation move across her face, like heat-up glass. Surprise, recoil, hold. Leela. Asha, she said softly, in that mother tone that suggested the world was manageable if you stayed close. Stay with me. The twins turned in tandem. The resemblance hit Ethan with an almost physical force. Dark irises, the intent look he used in due diligence meetings. One had a chipped front tooth, the other a small ink stain on her wrist. He'd missed the chip and the stain and everything they signified, bikes and school projects and summers that didn't include him. Priya, he said. Ethan. Her voice was neutral, the way you'd address someone who had once been both shelter and storm. The last time they stood in public together, a court stenographer recorded things neither of them really meant, and a judge called it irretrievable breakdown. He had agreed with the judge. It felt at the time like a cost center to be closed. A TSA officer asked them to move along. They didn't. Why are you here? Priya asked. No warmer, but not cruel. My flight from Zurich landed early, he said. Board vote at noon. And you? We're connecting to Raleigh, she said. My mother had surgery. We were delayed. The twins watched the ground between their parents as if a message would appear there. People flowed around them with the frictionless ease of those on schedule. Ethan had no schedule for this. Leela, Priya said. This is... I know, Leela replied, eyes on his shoes. He's famous. Not for anything fun, Asha added with 8-year-old contempt. Something in Ethan unclenched, a laugh he didn't let out. He crouched to their level, his suit a little too crisp for the sticky floor. I'm not fun famous, he said, but I make excellent pancakes. Do you? Asha's eyebrows climbed. Used to, he said. It's like riding a bike. Leela considered him the way a junior associate might. Is this person telling the truth? And what's the angle? Mom makes waffles. An upgrade, he said. Priya's hand tightened on the handle of a carry-on, a small gesture anyone else would miss. He saw it. That had been the problem once upon a time. He saw everything but didn't always answer it with kindness. We have to make security, she said. They'll reassign our seats. I can walk you, Ethan offered, then instantly heard the possessive in it. Priya shook her head. We'll manage. A beat. Then she asked, careful, how are you, Ethan? He could say good, because his fund, Mercer Gray Capital, had just beaten the index by 7 points, and his name grazed magazine covers, and his mother sent texts with too many exclamation marks. He could say fine, the adult default. The true answer, visible in the way his hands trembled, was neither. I'm late for a vote, he said instead. Of course, Priya said, with a small, wry smile that didn't reach her eyes. He wondered if she too heard the echo of 6 years earlier. We are always late for your life. Asha tugged Priya's sleeve. Can the famous not-fun pancake man come to Grandma's? Priya laughed then. It sounded like a window opening. No, baby, not today. Ethan nodded, took the gift of that laugh, and stored it. Could I, he began, could I call? Just to check on your mom, and, he faltered, and on you. Priya looked at him as if choosing among many roads. She took out a pen, wrote a number on his boarding pass, an old habit. "For updates only," she said. He slipped the pass into his pocket like a relic. He watched them join the security line, the twins threading their backpacks through the scanner's mouth. Priya didn't look back, and he deserved that. He wanted to call Russell over, to plan a strategy, to turn this into a problem with an answer. Instead, he stood under the departures board, blinking against time. His phone buzzed again. Gerald Whitman, mentor, chairman, the man who'd hand-built Ethan's ambition until it towered, sent a text. "Boardroom 12. Vote is not optional," he typed back. "Understood." Then, because the universe was feeling theatrical, his screen lit with a new message from an unknown number. A photo arrived. 2 little girls in Halloween costumes, a bee and a pirate, standing in front of a house he didn't recognize. No caption. A pulse of anger and hope surged. He didn't know which to trust. He looked up to find the security line swallowed Priya and the twins. And so the man who could buy anything walked toward a meeting where he'd have to choose whom to become. In the years since he left, Ethan had invented a marriage that made sense in court. 2 competent adults, a difference in priorities, a dignified split. It looked clean on paper, which was how he liked things. The marriage he didn't talk about started with internships and pretended detachment. Priya had been a public interest lawyer when they met. She handled eviction cases while he ran numbers that moved rents in ways that made her eyes sharpen. He loved her because she told him the truth. He married her because she made a spreadsheet for their wedding, but kept a handwritten list of songs her father used to play on Sundays. When her pregnancy test turned positive, he told himself he could be present on a delay. You can fix anything with a good quarter. Priya's belly grew, his fund grew faster. He took calls in hospital hallways, bought a bigger apartment, set up trusts. He thought in terms of provision, not presence. The betrayal came wrapped in data. 6 months after the twins arrived, he confronted her with a printed lab report, a paternity test. His counsel had insisted, "For your protection." He watched the blood leave her face when he placed the envelope on the table. He told himself he was being prudent. He told himself good men verified, and then forgave. He told himself many things that night. The results were inconclusive. His lawyer said, "It happens. Retest." Priya's lawyer said, "We're done here." Priya herself said nothing for a long time. Then, "I have stood in courtrooms where men used their power to make women feel small. I didn't think I'd bring one of those home." He ordered a second test. It came back with a variability that made his head spin. The lab cited chain of custody concerns. A good man might have thrown the test away. Ethan tightened controls, hired the best family lawyer in the city, and asked for a formal custody agreement. He framed it as stability. The papers smelled like bleach. They traded barbs across conference tables at Donnelly and Pike, with coffee too hot and pens that felt like weapons. Priya was frighteningly calm until the day she wasn't, when she said, "You want certainty more than you want us." He won the financial negotiations in every measurable way. He lost the thing it should have been in service of. Priya left with the twins for Raleigh, where her mother lived, where people wore school colors and the sky wasn't always reflected in glass. Ethan signed, wired, and returned to the machine that loved him back. For 6 years he avoided the quiet. He dated women who needed reservations, bought planes he named after lost constellations, and said yes to interviews where he sounded humane. He sent gifts to Raleigh without a return address. Museum memberships, a very small violin, a writing desk. He had a newsletter-level understanding of their lives. He knew Leela drew suns with too many rays, and Asher collected smooth stones, because Priya's cousin posted photos. He loved his daughters as if loving were a hedge. The truth sat in a folder he didn't open, labeled Private Mercer Prior. He'd asked Russell to lock it and forget the passcode. Any time he reached for it, he would remember the look on Priya's face when he slid the envelope across their kitchen table and stop. There are decisions you can't expense against the future. And yet, when he saw them at JFK, something old and undamaged rose. He understood suddenly that if he wanted anything like redemption, he'd have to sit in rooms without a vote and say, "I was wrong." At 11:59, he walked into the boardroom at Mercer Gray. The floor-to-ceiling windows turned Midtown into a futurist painting. Gerald sat at the head of the table, white hair like frost under recessed lights, eyes full of that paternal warmth Ethan once mistook for safety. "We're glad you could make time," Gerald said, which was how he said, "You belong to us." On the agenda, an acquisition pitched as a strategic alignment. They planned to fold a philanthropic foundation into the firm's new impact fund, a deal that smelled like pennies on a cold day, metallic, faintly wrong. "Questions?" Gerald asked. Ethan cleared his throat. Priya's number was a weight in his pocket. "Why does the foundation's donor anonymity clause extend to board members?" he asked. "This is charitable-sounding leverage. We're buying reputations." Gerald smiled. "We're buying scale. You worry too much about the label." The vote would be 11-1 if Ethan opposed. He knew because Victor Hahn, the CFO with perfect lapels, had whispered it in the hallway. "Don't embarrass yourself. The world runs on deals made by men who can stand to be disliked." "Motion passes," Gerald said when the hands went up. He looked at Ethan as if to ask, "Are you still my son?" Ethan's phone buzzed, loud in the polished room. He glanced down. Priya. He didn't think. He left. Power hummed behind him. The hallway stank of recent paint. "My mother didn't make it to surgery," Priya said when he answered. The words came evenly, as if carefully poured. "We're not flying on." The elevator reached the lobby. The winter light outside cut sharp. "Where are you?" he asked. She told him. He went. The hospital in Queens smelled like hand soap and fatigue. Ethan found Priya sitting upright in a waiting area chair, not crumpled. He couldn't imagine her crumpled, but still. The twins sat cross-legged on either side, sketching quietly on pads a volunteer must have offered. Grief moves through a family in different dialects. Priya looked at him the way people look at an old apartment they once loved, with tenderness and inventory. "You came." "I did." He didn't reach for her. He had forfeited the right to touch the person he had once known better than anyone. He crouched by the twins, eye level again, remembering some manual he'd skimmed about meeting children where they were. "I'm sorry about your grandmother," he said. Leela nodded solemnly. Asha drew her lines harder. "We're staying till the funeral," Leela said. "Then we go home." Home meant the small house in Raleigh with the sagging porch steps where a cat sometimes appeared in the morning. Ethan had imagined it 1,000 times and never once stood inside. "Is there anything I can do?" he asked. Priya surprised him. "We could use a ride," she said, "and a bed for a night." He glanced at Russell, sent a look that said, "Make it happen." His driver could be at the curb in 5, a hotel suite near the hospital, or, "You can have the guest rooms," he said. No strings. He heard the old hymn in the cadence and tried again. "It's safe and close." Priya considered. "One night," she said, "because the girls haven't slept, and because you asked right." He exhaled. "Thank you." At the penthouse in Tribeca, the river wore the color of money. Floor-to-ceiling windows, art Ethan didn't love, but a consultant insisted was speaking to the moment. He watched Priya take it in without that narrowing of the eyes people get when they want to belong here. She didn't want to belong here. She wanted a clean place to lay her daughters' heads. The girls explored quietly, more cat than tourist, testing thresholds. Leela found the piano and pressed a single note. It hung in the room like a question. Asha drifted to the bookshelves, pulled down a copy of the Phantom Toll Booth, opened it to the map. "Where's Expectations?" she asked. "East of Reality," Ethan said, surprised the answer came without dust. Priya glanced at him, something soft crossing her face, and gone. It was late. Russell ordered food. Ethan stocked the fridge with things he remembered Priya liked. Whole milk, strawberries, grocery store flowers because peonies weren't in season, and peonies had been their joke about unnecessary beauty. He showed the girls the guest rooms, the way the blackout curtains worked, the bathroom drawers filled with endless hotel-sized toiletries, because his life was 3/4 airport. "Do you live alone?" Leela asked. "I do," he said. "Because you're rich?" Asha asked, blunt. "Because I made choices," he said. He sounded like someone in rehab for ambition. While the twins showered, Priya stood at the kitchen island holding a glass of water, as if it were an argument she hadn't decided to make. "Why did you oppose the vote?" she asked. He blinked. Of course she knew. She always followed the money. "Because anonymity is a lie with a tuxedo," he said. "Because Gerald is dressing influence as charity." Priya nodded. "There's a file on your desk," she said, "labeled Foundation. Open it when I'm gone." He waited for more. She waited for him to ask. He found a patience he didn't used to have. "I will," he said. She put the glass down. "The twins should know you," she said quietly. "Because you're their father. And because I'm tired." He held the counter like a rail on a moving train. "Priya." He had practiced apologies in his head, in interviews he never gave. "I was wrong," he said. "About the test, about everything. I wanted certainty more than I wanted you." She looked at him then, really looked, and he saw the grief and the steel and the practicality that had made her pack and go when the city became unsafe in ways he didn't see. "I won't trade their peace for your remorse," she said. "If you want in, you're in on terms that make sense for them, not for you." "Yes," he said, "whatever you need." She almost smiled. "What I need is help getting through a funeral week with 2 kids who think death is a plot twist in a movie, and a place to grieve without managing a billionaire's feelings." He nodded. "I can do logistics," he said. "I'm excellent at logistics." It was their old joke too. His love language was calendar invites. That night, after the girls slept and the city put on its quieter hum, Ethan walked to his office. He stood in front of the locked drawer, texted Russell for the passcode. Russell replied immediately. "You sure?" He typed yes. The drawer clicked. The file came free. The Foundation dossier was thick with photos and memos. A logo he knew, a stylized flame, appeared on the first page. The Adamas Foundation, founded by a shipping magnate's widow, had last year announced a partnership with Mercer Gray to scale impact. The internal memo said something else. Donor advisement fees routed through Shell LLCs, grants earmarked for districts where regulators were balking at Mercer Gray acquisitions, a hush of money over the loud machine of democracy. A post-it note in Priya's handwriting flagged a name. Rosalie's, it said. Lab Tech. See also, and an arrow to a copy of the paternity test chain of custody log. Someone had signed for the sample transfer at a lab in Midtown. The signature looked careful, like a forging of calm. Ethan's scalp prickled. He remembered a long-forgotten conversation in the kitchen, Priya's voice low. "Gerald keeps calling. He says he's concerned about what motherhood will do to your focus." Ethan had laughed then, kissed her, and gone to bed. Now the laugh tasted like pennies. He closed the file gently, as if it could bite. When he returned to the hallway, Priya stood there, hair damp, wearing one of the Mercer Gray conference T-shirts he kept as nightwear. Her eyes were bright and rimmed red, as if she'd been awake for hours with old math. "I thought you should see," she said. He nodded. "I see." "Good," she said, "because you're not the only one who can read a spreadsheet and feel sick." In the morning, the twins declared the city too loud and the kitchen too shiny. Ethan agreed. He took out a bowl and ingredients he hadn't touched in months. From a cupboard behind the coffee machine, he unearthed a measuring cup etched with flower scars from another life. Priya's eyebrows rose when she saw it. Then she returned to combing Asha's hair, the domestic choreography they'd once known by heart, rediscovered without comment. "Why is it called batter?" Leela asked. "Because we beat it," Ethan answered, whisking. She seemed to enjoy that. Cause and effect, violence with purpose. He had to ask which girl liked blueberries and which insisted on bananas, and Priya's look held all the years where he should have been in those conversations. He learned quickly. Leela liked things precise. Asha liked things surprising. The pancakes were imperfect but edible. The twins ate with unguarded concentration, the kind of focus Ethan spent millions cultivating in his analysts. He sat across from them with his coffee, tried to stay small so they could expand. After breakfast, practicalities. Priya needed to meet the funeral director, call her brother in Chennai, tell her father gently what she'd just learned from the neurosurgeon. "I can take the girls to the park," Ethan said. The sentence felt like stepping onto ice he'd once fallen through. "Bethesda Terrace?" Priya asked. "The Angel Fountain." He remembered the first time she'd taken him there. When they were so young, both of them were surprised by it. Of course. They bundled in coats that were slightly too big. His life didn't have kids' sizes in it yet. In the car, the twins talked about a class terrarium that had collapsed and a crayon that melted on a heater. Ethan offered adult questions. They offered correction. At the park, he bought hot chocolate and napkins. He didn't touch his phone. At the fountain, the twins asked for stories about when their parents were friendly. Ethan told them about the time Priya represented a woman who refused to leave her apartment because the landlord had lied about asbestos, and how she had stood in court with her chin up, steady like a tuning fork, and the judge looked tired until he didn't. "What is asbestos?" Asha asked. "Old poison," Ethan said. "Like regret. Hard to see until you know where to look." "Do you regret us?" Leela asked suddenly, too calmly. She watched him like a scientist watches a petri dish. He knelt, so the air between them wasn't heavy. "Every day I regret not being there," he said. "I never regret you." She took that in, nodded once, a ledger entry. Asha pointed at a busker playing Vivaldi with bravado. "We had a cat named Vivaldi," she announced. "Past tense?" he asked gently. "He ran away to be with the Philharmonic," she said. "Mum said to wish him well." He laughed aloud. Priya had always believed in better endings. He wished, suddenly and fiercely, to deserve a place in a story she would tell the twins about him when he wasn't there. Not a cautionary tale, a small, usable truth. His phone vibrated. He let it. The girls played on the steps, daring each other to leap farther. He applauded at the right moments. It felt like an audition for a role he'd abandoned. He was not good at being a beginner. He tried to be delighted by his incompetence. On the walk back, the unknown number texted again. Another photo, a parking garage, a handoff, the shadow of a man he recognized, Victor Hahn, shaking hands with a woman with a lab ID clipped to her pocket. The timestamp was 6 years ago, 2 weeks before he asked for the second paternity test. He knew because the winter that year had a particular quality of light, and because the phone said so. The caption this time, "Thought you'd like a souvenir." His mouth went dry. The twins were telling a joke about knock-knocks and pizza. He texted back, "Who is this?" No answer. He put the phone away. At the apartment, Priya had arranged a small altar, flowers, a photo of her mother in a sari, a candle set in one of Ethan's heavy whiskey glasses. She looked at the twins' flushed cheeks. "Good. Dad didn't drop us," Asha reported faithfully. Priya's eyes flashed with something undefinable. The word Dad was both gift and flint. "Thank you," Priya said to Ethan. Not for the park, he thought, but for the absence of performance. "My office," he said quietly and showed her the text. She read it twice. "Rosales," she said, tapping the screen. "Lab tech. I tried to reach her 2 years ago. She was suddenly no longer with the organization. Victor is..." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. "We go to Gerald," Ethan said, reflex speaking. "We demand answers." Priya shook her head. "Gerald already thinks he can parent you," she said. "He'll turn this into a lesson about dangerous women and opportunists, and you'll nod because he gets the verbs right. We need something else." "What?" "Leverage," she said with a small, almost reluctant smile. "You taught me that word." He looked at the candle in his whiskey glass, the flame steady as a metronome. He said yes to a plan he didn't fully understand, which was new for him. He said yes because 2 girls were asleep in his house, and they carried in their faces both his debt and his chance to repay it. Priya's plan was made of old tools: paper, presents, patience. It began in a place Ethan had never been, the Midtown lab whose logo appeared on that first envelope that toppled their life. They walked in on a Tuesday as if they owned the truth. Priya wore a charcoal coat that made her look even more like a lawyer, even though she'd stopped practicing after rally, after the twins needed her and money didn't argue. Ethan didn't argue either. He carried a bouquet of bakery boxes, which he'd learned opened doors, donuts in exchange for kindness. "I'd like to speak to whoever oversees chain of custody logs," Priya said to the woman at the counter, who looked like she'd let nothing pass that shouldn't. "This is about an old case." "What case?" the woman asked. "A human one," Priya said. "I used to be an attorney. We're not litigating. We're trying to sleep better." The woman studied Priya's face and found the seam where grief had made a home. "Take a seat," she said. They waited. Ethan read a flyer about lab safety. Priya read nothing. She watched the hallway. A man with a name badge that said J. Winter came out, shook their hands. "We can't disclose patient data," he said, "even to charming people bearing carbohydrates." "Of course not," Priya said. "We're not asking for results. We're asking about process. 6 years ago, a sample transfer in your paternity testing department was signed out by a tech named Rosales. We're trying to confirm if she worked that day." "We don't discuss staffing," Winter said. "And we are aware that this is over the line," Priya said, with that particular tenderness she used in court when she needed a witness to like her. "But we have reason to believe someone tampered with our case. We won't sue you. We won't even quote you. We just need to know if we are crazy." Winter looked at Ethan, then back at Priya, then at the boxes. "What kind of donuts?" "Maple," Ethan said. He grimaced. "Those are my weakness." He took them into a small conference room with frosted glass. After a few minutes, he returned with a thin folder. He opened it on the table, angled toward Priya. "Rosales was on shift," he said. He pointed to a log. "But this signature." He shook his head. "That's not hers." Ethan leaned in. The letters were careful, like the chain of custody itself had put on a suit. "Who signed it?" "We don't know," Winter said. "Whoever it was had access. Not a customer, a VIP. Our systems mark that differently. See the stamp?" Ethan saw a tiny star next to the transfer code. "VIP? High-profile cases," Winter said. "We flag them. Extra security." "So extra security meant anyone with power could bend the guardrails," Priya said coolly. Winter didn't deny it. "Look, people push," he said. "Someone made a call. People here wanted to cooperate." "Who called?" Ethan asked. Winter's eyes were careful. "I like my job," he said. "We won't name you," Priya said. "We will keep your donuts secret." Winter sighed, then took out a pad, wrote 2 letters, 1M. He underlined them twice. "That's all I can say," he said. "Bring better donuts next time." In the hallway, Ethan stared at the letters as if they were a code. "Whitman and McAllister," he said slowly. "Gerald's old law firm. They handle his everything." Priya nodded, jaw set. "He wanted you clean," she said. "He couldn't risk you choosing family over the firm." Ethan understood something then that had been building like weather. Gerald hadn't been saving him all those years. He'd been curating him. Every speech about character, every dinner where Gerald told stories about deals that went sideways until he set them right, all of it had been a meticulous narrowing of Ethan's life. He called Victor. Victor picked up on the second ring. "Busy day?" Victor asked, his tone the supercilious cheer of someone who knows where the bodies are buried and has drawn a map. "Let's meet," Ethan said. "Now." Victor named a coffee shop downtown where the pastries were ironic. Ethan didn't bring Russell. He brought the photo. Victor arrived in a coat that cost more than rent in a small city. He sat without greeting, hands clean of anything as vulgar as sugar. "What do you think you have?" he asked. Ethan slid the phone across the table. Victor didn't flinch. "That's not me," he said easily. "Of course it isn't," Ethan said. "And that lab tech is not Rosales, and those initials don't stand for Whitman and McAllister." Victor smiled. "You've always had a talent for pattern recognition." "Why?" Ethan asked, and he hated the plea in it. "Why rig my life when you had my work?" "Because work is axiomatic," Victor said, as if explaining a principle to a bright student. "Family is stochastic. You were noise-prone. Gerald removed the noise." Ethan saw it suddenly. The philanthropy that looked like cover, the deals that smelled like favor, the way he was led gently to a cliff and asked to call it a view. "You forged a signature on a chain of custody log." "I arranged for someone to sign to protect the firm," Victor said. "Your personal drama risked a leak. The woman was compensated. She's in Miami now. There is nothing in writing, and you won't do anything because there's a board vote Thursday and you want to be chairman." Ethan thought of pancakes and hot chocolate and Priya's hand tightening around a suitcase handle at JFK. He thought of his daughter's future selves, trying to make sense of their father. He stood. "You don't know me as well as you think," he said. Victor's smile didn't waver. "We made you," he said softly. "We can unmake you." "Try," Ethan said and walked out. In the street, the cold felt like permission. The old Ethan would have called a crisis PR firm. The new Ethan called Christina, the housekeeper who had once told him gently to stop buying flowers that died in 2 days. She met him on a bench outside the penthouse, her scarf too thin for the weather, her eyes full of the kind of worry people carry when their boss looks different. "Mr. Mercer," she said, "you look like you've been thinking." "I have," he said. "The wrong man taught me how." Christina nodded. "You need someone who knows the building," she said. "What are we finding?" "The truth," he said, and laughed at how naive it sounded. He told her about the lab, the initials, the photo. Christina had a talent for solving. "The woman in the picture," she said, peering. "She came once before, dropped something with Russell for you. He was new then." She had a badge. "Rosales?" he asked. "I never got a name," she said, "but Russell will know. He always knows." Russell did. He had kept a ledger of visitors. He was the kind of man who filed reality into columns. "She's now in Miami," he confirmed. "Works at a clinic for an anesthesiologist who likes boats. I can get you a number." "Get me a flight," Ethan said. "And can you make sure Priya and the girls have what they need while I'm gone?" Russell smiled faintly. "I'm honored you asked." In the cab to LaGuardia, Ethan called Priya. "I'm going to Miami," he said. "Rosales may talk." Priya was silent a beat. "This is the moment I should say, 'Be careful,'" she said. "But also, burn it down." He laughed, surprised by joy amid the ash. "Yes," he said. "I'm learning to want the right things." Rosales lived in a building with balconies like teeth. She met Ethan in a cafe that smelled like oranges and printer ink. She was younger than he expected, with tired hands and a gaze that had learned to expect nothing good from men in suits. "I was told you'd be generous," she said before he could order. "I was told you were forced," he said. "I can be generous and sorry." She considered. 6 years ago," she said, "I got a call from a firm with initials. They said a VIP case needed discretion. They sent a courier with a package that had already been sealed. They asked me to sign for it and transfer it to our director. They offered me a bonus." She looked down at her coffee. "I was paying for my mother's chemo." I said yes. "Did you know whose case it was?" he asked. "I figured it out," she said. "I saw your name on an internal screen. I told myself it wasn't harm, it was intake. That's how they said it. Intake, like breathing in." He closed his eyes, saw Priya in their kitchen, saw himself holding an envelope like a man holding a grenade. "Do you have anything?" he asked. "A copy, a timestamp?" "I deleted everything," she said. "The director made us, but—" She reached in her purse, took out a small notebook, blue and battered. "I wrote it down," she said, "because I felt filthy and writing is what I do when I can't stop shaking." He took the notebook like a sacrament. On one page, in neat lines, a date and the initials W&M and a transaction ID. "This is enough," he said softly. "It's not official, but it's enough to start." She nodded. "I'm sorry," she said again. "Sometimes the power imbalance is a whole ecosystem and you only see your tiny leaf when you're drowning." He wired money that could make a life easier and also wrote down a number for a lawyer he trusted in Miami who didn't dress his ethics in expensive verbs. "If anyone comes asking," he said, "call her." On the flight back, he wrote his resignation speech in his head. Then he deleted it. Resignation would let the board keep the system intact. Cut off the infected limb, save the body. He needed something uglier. Exposure. He sent Priya a photo of the notebook page. She replied with a single word: leverage. "Thursday," he texted back, "at the vote." She answered, "I'll bring matches." The board gathered like weather again. Gerald sat with the benevolent brutality of an emperor. Victor's tie was perfect. Ethan took his seat as if it were a witness box. "Before we begin," Gerald said, "I want to address some whispers. People are talking about irregularities in our foundation partnership. Let me be clear. We operate with the highest ethics. Impact requires influence." Ethan stood before Gerald could finish. "Influence requires consent," he said. "We bought consent with other people's money." The room stilled. No one interrupted a chairman a breath away from a signature. Ethan opened the folder he'd brought. He placed on the polished wood the Rosales notebook page, the lab log photocopy with the careful false signature, the still from the parking garage where Victor's profile leaned into shadow. He put the initials BURIM at the center like a monogram. 6 years ago," he said, "someone altered a chain of custody record in a lab handling my paternity test. This firm's old counsel made a call. A tech signed a log that wasn't hers. That act destroyed my marriage. Before you tell me that's personal, notice what it reveals. We believe access entitles us to rearrange facts." Victor laughed softly. "This is touching," he said. "Did your ex-wife help with the theater?" "She did," Ethan said. "She's better at truth than I am." Gerald's smile chilled. "Ethan," he said, "your pain is real, but don't confuse it with governance. You are a steward of wealth. Do not use a personal grievance to humiliate the firm." "I'm not humbling the firm," Ethan said. "I'm humbling us." A murmur. The general counsel leaned forward, fingers on temples. "What are you asking for?" "An independent investigation," Ethan said. "Full access, suspension of the foundation deal, and a vote of no confidence in the CFO." He looked at Victor, saw the flash in the man's eyes, the calculation. "I have more," he added calmly. "Screenshots, email headers, a lab tech ready to testify that Whitman and McAllister directed the intake." Gerald's hands steepled. "Where did you obtain this?" he asked. "In the world you built," Ethan said. "It has seams." Gerald went colder. "You are trading on the firm's reputation to salve your domestic failures." Ethan felt everyone watching to see if the son would defy the father. He thought of Priya in her charcoal coat, of Leela testing the piano's single note, of Asha talking about a cat named Vivaldi. He let silence accumulate until it had its own gravity. "I'm trading on my name," he said. "You can keep yours." A woman who rarely spoke, Temi, a risk officer whose quiet had always made Ethan underestimate her, cleared her throat. "If these allegations are true," she said, "we face regulatory exposure and reputational harm that dwarfs any temporary embarrassment. I second the motion for an investigation." Victor scoffed. "You'll blow up a decade of returns because Ethan can't manage his home." Temi met his gaze. "We'll blow up a decade of returns because you managed our ethics using other people's blood." The vote went like a domino line. Once two fell, the rest couldn't keep their balance. Gerald watched, eyes almost tender. From a certain angle he could have been proud. When it was done, the investigation was approved. The foundation deal was frozen. Victor was suspended pending review. Gerald stood at the end, his chair scraping like a complaint. "You're making a performative mistake," he told Ethan. "This industry is built on selective blindness. The market will punish you for squinting." "It already has," Ethan said, thinking of 6 years of silent birthdays. As the board scattered, Victor leaned in, snake quiet. "You can't afford to lose us," he said. "You don't know how alone this will feel by morning." "I know alone," Ethan said. "I just learned its name." When Ethan left the room, Priya was in the hallway, wearing the kind of calm that once broke him open. She didn't ask how it went. She saw it in his shoulders. "You did it," she said. "We did it," he said, "and there will be consequences." "I have to take the girls south," she said. "Funeral is Saturday. Come if you want. Sit in the back. Don't make it about you." "I won't," he said. He meant it. They took the elevator down without touching. When the doors opened, the city felt briefly new. The funeral in Raleigh was modest in a way that made the grief easier to carry. The church smelled like wood and rain. Priya's mother had a photo from 1987 at the front, laughing, head thrown back, a woman who taught Priya how to leave and how to stay, both. Ethan sat in the back as instructed. He wore a suit that signaled respect rather than price. The twins sat between Priya and their uncle. When the hymn began, Asha didn't sing. Leela mouthed the words. Ethan prayed in the way Wall Street men pray when they've run out of language. After the service, he stood on the lawn as people who had eaten Priya's mother's food told stories that put the woman on a porch, in a kitchen, at a PTA meeting. No one cared who he was. It was delicious. Priya came to him later, under a pop-up tent with plates of samosas and lemon bars. Her face was exhausted and luminous, the strange beauty of grief honestly born. "You can come to the house," she said, "for an hour." She smiled a little. No photo ops. The house had the sagging steps, the catless porch, a chalk drawing on the front walk. Inside, magnets on the fridge that read like a map of 8-year-old priorities, a museum schedule, a library checkout list, a drawing of a ladybug with eye makeup. The writing desk he had sent was in a corner, covered with paper. It looked like it belonged because Priya had made it belong. Ethan washed dishes. He took out the trash. He changed the kitchen light bulb when Priya couldn't reach. The ordinary tasks were a revelation. He had thought heroism required votes and columns. It required hands. In the backyard, as dusk fell and the mosquitoes considered their plan, Leela came to stand next to him. "Are you going to be around now?" she asked. He thought of promising everything. He didn't. "I will call every Sunday," he said, "and any day you want. I will come when it helps, not when it makes a scene. I will listen. I will be wrong and try again." She weighed this. "Mom says people can change if they want to, and someone is watching." "I believe your mom," he said. Asha joined them, holding a rock with a white stripe. "This one looks like a road," she announced. "Where does it go?" "Where we make it," Ethan said, corny and true. On Monday, the investigation leaked. It always leaks. Reporters called. Headlines braided words like rigged and paternity and philanthropy with Ethan's name. Gerald issued a statement that sounded like it was carved from ice. Victor hired a lawyer who once represented a mouthwash company. The market dipped, then corrected, then dipped again because volatility is contagious. Ethan's mother called to demand whether any of this is about me, which was how she framed all disasters. He told her he loved her. He told her the truth. She told him to come to dinner anyway. Love is sometimes that stubborn. At Mercer Gray, compliance people wore expressions like bad oysters. Temi ran point with competence that turned Ethan's shame into something useful. "If we're doing this," she told him privately, "we do it hard." He stepped back from day-to-day operations. It wasn't resignation, it was making room. He put Priya's notebook page in a lockbox and asked Temi to copy it to an encrypted drive, then destroy the copy of the copy, then the original. "You can't keep souvenirs from a fire," he said. That week, late at night in his apartment that didn't feel as lonely, he found the twins' toothbrushes in the guest bathroom and sat on the closed toilet and wept the kind of weeping men are told is unbecoming. He thought of a word he'd never liked, repentance, and let it sit with him until it turned from church to practice. When he called Sunday as promised, the girls put him on speaker and quizzed him about a book they were reading for class. "We are not reading aloud to you," Asha said, "because you need to practice hearing between the lines." He grinned. "I am terrible at that," he said. "Teach me." Priya got on at the end. "We're okay," she said. "You?" "Wrecked," he said. "And okay." "Good," she said, and he could hear her smile. Spring arrived slowly. In New York, daffodils stabbed up through tired soil. In Raleigh, the twins learned the difference between a cicada and a locust and insisted on telling Ethan with grave precision. He listened. He learned. He kept showing up on Sundays, sometimes on Wednesdays, sometimes in person for a school concert where he looked so proud of being in the wrong row that people forgave him. The investigation at Mercer Gray yielded a report that read like a morality play. Yes, the Foundation partnership had mixed motives. Yes, Victor engineered shell routes. Yes, Whitman and McAllister had facilitated intake processes that contaminated decisions. No one went to jail, which made Ethan angry. People lost jobs, which made him sad. The board asked Gerald to step down for the optics. He refused. The board made another optics. Ethan declined the chairmanship when it was offered, to everyone's shock. Temmie took it, to everyone's benefit. "I don't want to run a system I just got done breaking," he told Temmie. She nodded. "I'll build a better one," she said. "You can come visit." He did. He started a small fund that invested in boring things like municipal bonds and beautiful things like community land trusts. He spoke at precisely one conference where he said, "I traded people for principles and discovered principles aren't worth much without people." The quote did well on social media for a week and then drowned in a new trend. He didn't care. Priya returned to law part-time in a clinic that helped families negotiate medical debt. She and Ethan built a custody plan that didn't feel like a compromise so much as a collaboration. They practiced fighting without drawing blood. They wrote the rules down on paper a social worker gave them, then changed them when life required small edits. One night, after a school play in which Asha succeeded in not rolling her eyes at a boy who forgot his lines, and Leela played a tree with extraordinary stillness, they walked back to Priya's car under a sky that looked like a ceiling full of accidental holes. The girls ran ahead, backpacks bouncing. "I don't know what to call this," Ethan said, gesturing at the air between them. "It's not who we were. It's not—" He didn't say back together. He wouldn't. "It's us," Priya said. "Later and better." He laughed. "Later and better is the most honest brand I've ever heard." She took a breath. "There's something else," she said. She reached into her bag, pulled out an envelope, the lab's logo again. He froze. She saw it. "It's not a test," she said gently. "It's an affidavit. After you went to Miami, Rosales reached out to me. She wanted to write down what she did. I told her truth only hurts when it's delayed. She asked me to give you this when you were ready." He held the envelope. He didn't open it. "I believe you," he said. "I don't need—" "I know," she said. "That's why you can." He tore the top cleanly, slid out the paper. In neat legal language, Rosales described the call from Whitman and McAllister, the intake, the bonus, the regret. The last line read, "I participated in a process where donors and firms confuse power with goodness. I am sorry for the harm." He put the paper back with care. He slipped the envelope into his inner pocket, over his heart, like a cliché. "Thank you," he said. "Don't thank me for a wound closing," Priya said. "Thank the body for remembering how." The twins clambered into the car, fighting about a broken crayon and then forgetting to fight. Ethan buckled Asha's seatbelt when it jammed and didn't touch Priya when he shut the door. He watched them drive away with a yearning that felt less like hunger and more like patience. That summer, they went to Coney Island together, the four of them, and bought lemonade that was too sweet and watched the ocean behave like itself. Ethan stood behind the twins as they drew their names in the sand and wrote his smaller, not because he believed he mattered less, but because he wanted room for it to grow without anyone noticing. On the boardwalk, Priya bumped his shoulder with hers once, companionably. He didn't make it symbolic. He took it as weather. He let it pass and returned like the tide, steady. He was still rich. He was still famous for things that don't matter up close. But some mornings he woke before the market opened and felt a quiet he hadn't earned yet. He got up anyway and made coffee and sent the twins a photo of a city sunrise and a joke that made them groan. He took the jokes back in stride. He practiced. He faltered. He apologized without invoices. He built a different kind of portfolio. Moments held long enough to mature. When people asked him, nosy at parties, whether he and Priya would ever, he said, "We are." He didn't explain further. The story didn't fit into a caption. It barely fit into a life, and yet it did. One September afternoon, years after JFK, but close enough that the smell of jet fuel could still fold him in half if he let it, he stood in the arrivals hall again, this time holding a sign that read Leela and Asha in block letters, because the twins insisted he embarrass them like other dads. When they ran into him, he remembered to bend his knees. When Priya walked toward him, he remembered not to hope for a thing that wasn't on the schedule. And when she reached him, she touched his elbow, briefly, like a code. Later and better, the touch said, later and better. He believed her. He believed in the small, humiliating glory of trying again without guarantee. He believed in pancakes, and in affidavits, and in the glittering use of influence that looks like not using it at all. He believed that power could be repurposed, like an old building that everyone thought would never suit a family until one day it did. And sometimes, when no one was watching, he believed he might deserve the life he was learning to live. If this story moved you, even a little, tap that like button so more people find it. Share it with someone who loves layered, messy redemption arcs. And if you want more cinematic, character-rich dramas that ask hard questions and still land with warmth, subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss the next one. Drop your thoughts and favorite moments in the comments. Team Later and Better, or do you have a different title for Ethan and Priya? Thanks for spending time with these characters. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life.